The ammonia-scented air of the deserted office building was Owen's nightly cathedral, a place of silent work and reflection. His cart, squeaking a rhythmic complaint, was his only companion as he pushed it across the polished marble floor of the penthouse lobby. Taped to the handle was a drawing from his daughter, Penny, a crayon sun with a wobbly smile that shone brighter than any of the recessed lighting above. He was just a janitor, a ghost in gray overalls who polished away the day's footprints, but to that little girl, he was the whole world. It was a responsibility that felt as heavy as lead and as light as a prayer. He emptied a wastebasket filled with crumpled financial reports and artisanal coffee cups, the detritus of a life he couldn't imagine. That's when he saw it. Lying beside the leg of a leather couch, a delicate, antique locket on a silver chain glittered under the fluorescent lights. It must have slipped from a purse or pocket. He picked it up, the metal cool against his calloused skin. It felt heavy, not just with its own weight, but with the weight of someone's history. He clicked it open. Inside, a faded, miniature photograph of a young man in a naval uniform stared back. Owen's breath caught. It was the kind of thing that was irreplaceable, a vessel of memory. His own memories of his wife, Sarah, were all he had left, locked away not in silver, but in the quiet, aching chambers of his heart. For a fleeting moment, temptation whispered. The locket was old, probably worth a lot. Enough to fix the rattling engine in his car, enough to buy Penny the new backpack she wanted, the one without the frayed strap he kept trying to patch. He closed it with a soft snap, the sound echoing in the cavernous silence. No. His father had taught him that a man's worth wasn't in his wallet, it was in his word. And his word to himself, to Penny, to Sarah's memory, was to be a good man. He carefully placed the locket into a clean cloth and tucked it into the top pocket of his work shirt, right over his heart. Isabelle Renault tapped her pen against a stack of architectural blueprints, her brow furrowed. As the building's operations manager, she was the one who dealt with the pressure from all sides, demanding tenants, tight budgets, and the board of directors who saw people as numbers on a spreadsheet. She was working late again, fueled by stale coffee and a relentless drive to prove herself in a world that still felt foreign and unforgiving after her own personal losses. She glanced up as the janitor, Owen, silently entered her office to empty the trash. She offered a brief, tired nod. He was a fixture, quiet and efficient, almost invisible. She'd seen him around, sometimes with his little girl waiting for him by the service entrance, a small, bright spot in his otherwise gray existence. He seemed, beaten down by life, another single parent struggling to stay afloat. She felt a pang of sympathy, but quickly suppressed it. Pity was a luxury she couldn't afford, it clouded judgment. Just then, Mr. Sterling, the resident of the penthouse suite, strode past her open door, his expensive shoes clicking with self-importance. He shot a disdainful look at Owen. "Make sure you use the proper polish on the brass fixtures this time," he sneered, not breaking stride. "They looked shoddy yesterday." Owen simply nodded, his face impassive. "Yes, Mr. Sterling." Isabel bristled at the man's arrogance. Sterling was a constant source of complaints, a man who believed his wealth entitled him to treat everyone else as his personal staff. She watched Owen finish his task, his movements deliberate and dignified despite the insult. He gave her a small, polite smile as he left, and for the first time, she noticed the deep exhaustion in his eyes, but also a quiet, unyielding strength that intrigued her. She found herself wondering about the men behind the uniform, the story behind that profound stillness. The scent of burnt toast hung in the air of their small apartment. "Oops," Owen said, scraping the blackened edges into the sink. "Daddy's a better cleaner than a cook," Penny giggled from the kitchen table, her legs swinging. "It's okay, Daddy. I like crunchy toast," he smiled, his heart swelling. Her ability to find the good in everything was the anchor that kept him from drifting away on his own sea of grief. He placed the less burnt piece on her plate, next to a small scoop of scrambled eggs. Her backpack, the one with the frayed strap, sat on the chair beside her. He saw her trace the worn fabric with her finger, and a familiar pang of inadequacy hit him. He wanted to give her the world, but most days he could barely give her what she needed. After Sarah died, he'd left his old life behind, the stressful, demanding career that had kept him away from home too often. He'd been a paramedic, a job that required him to face the fragility of life every single day. When he couldn't save his own wife from the sudden illness that took her, the sirens and emergencies became unbearable echoes of his failure. So he'd chosen this, a quiet job that let him be there to pick Penny up, to make her dinner, to read her a story. It was a life stripped to the essentials: work, sleep, and her. As he packed her lunch, his fingers brushed against the cloth-wrapped locket in his pocket. The decision was already made, but the weight of it was still there. He would return it to the security desk in the morning, with a note for it to be placed in the lost and found. He thought of the men in the photograph, of the woman who must be missing a piece of her heart. He knew that feeling all too well. He couldn't keep it. It wouldn't just be stealing an object, it would be stealing a memory, and memories were the only ghosts worth keeping. The next evening, Owen approached the main security desk in the lobby, the locket heavy in his palm. Before he could speak to the guard, a frail, elegant woman with kind eyes and silver hair approached him hesitantly. It was Mrs. Eleanor Vance, a quiet resident from one of the upper floors who rarely left her apartment. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft as velvet. I believe you work here. I was hoping you might be able to help me." Owen's heart skipped a beat. He recognized her from the few times he'd seen her being helped into a car. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help?" Before he could pull out the locket, she continued, a faint blush on her cheeks. "I seem to have misplaced something very dear to me." A silver locket. Owen's hand froze in his pocket. He looked at her, then slowly withdrew the cloth-wrapped object. "Is this it, ma'am?" Her eyes, a pale, watery blue, widened. A gasp escaped her lips as she took it, her trembling fingers tracing the engraving. "Oh, thank you. Thank you, young man." "I was so worried." From across the lobby, Isabel was heading for the exit when she saw the exchange. She paused, watching. She saw the open relief on the elderly woman's face and the quiet humility on Owen's. He wasn't just returning it, he was handling the moment with a gentleness that was deeply moving. He waved off Mrs. Vance's effusive thanks, simply saying, "I'm just glad you have it back." As Mrs. Vance walked away, clutching the locket to her chest, Isabel approached Owen. "That was a good thing you did," she said, her tone softer than she intended. He looked up, surprised by her attention. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said, meeting his gaze. "They wouldn't have." A small smile touched his lips, a genuine one this time, and it transformed his tired face. "My daughter, Penny," she'd say. "It's just about being a good neighbor." For the first time, Isabel saw not a janitor, but a man of profound integrity. A quiet hero in a gray uniform. A few days later, a storm broke in the form of Mr. Sterling. He stormed into the lobby, his face a mask of theatrical fury. "My watch is gone," he bellowed, his voice bouncing off the marble walls. "A Patek Philippe. It was on the nightstand in my study. It's been stolen." His eyes, cold and accusatory, scanned the lobby and landed directly on Owen, who was polishing the brass door handles nearby. "You," Sterling spat, pointing a finger. "You were cleaning my floor last night. You're the only one who could have taken it." Owen straightened up, his rag held tightly in his hand. His face remained calm, but a cold dread washed over him. "Mr. Sterling, I didn't take your watch. I didn't see a watch." "Lies." Sterling shouted, taking a step closer. "A man like you, working a dead-end job for pennies. The temptation must have been too much. I bet you thought you could pawn it and solve all your pathetic little problems." The word pathetic struck Owen like a physical blow. He thought of Penny's worn backpack, the second-hand clothes, the constant worry over bills. Sterling was twisting his struggle into a motive for a crime. Isabel, alerted by the commotion, hurried out of her office. "Mr. Sterling, what's going on?" "What's going on is that I've been robbed by your staff," he roared. "By him?" He jabbed his finger at Owen again. "I want him searched. I want him fired. I want him arrested." People were starting to gather, other tenants and staff, their faces a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Owen stood his ground, his dignity his only shield. "I am not a thief," he said, his voice low but firm, cutting through Sterling's tirade. But Sterling was on a roll, playing to the crowd, his voice dripping with condescending certainty. "We'll see about that. We'll just see." "Call security," Sterling commanded, his eyes gleaming with a cruel victory. Now, Isabel hesitated, looking from Sterling's smug face to Owen's stoic one. Her gut told her Owen was innocent, but Sterling was a powerful, influential tenant. An accusation like this could ruin a man. Before she could intervene further, 2 uniformed security guards, their faces grimly professional, arrived. "Mr. Sterling, you called," one of them asked. "Yes. This man has stolen a highly valuable watch from my apartment. I want him detained until the police arrive," Sterling ordered, gesturing at Owen. The guards exchanged a look. They knew Owen as the quiet, reliable night janitor. But an order from the penthouse tenant was an order. "Sir, we need you to come with us," the first guard said, his voice devoid of emotion. Owen felt a wave of humiliation wash over him. His gaze swept over the crowd of onlookers, their eyes filled with suspicion. At that precise, terrible moment, a small voice cut through the tension. "Daddy." Penny stood near the service entrance, her school backpack, the one with the frayed strap, slung over her shoulder. Her eyes were wide with fear as she saw the guards approaching her father. Owen's heart fractured. Not in front of her. Please, not in front of her. He gave her a weak, reassuring smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's okay, sweetie. Just a misunderstanding," but the guards were already moving, their hands reaching for his arms. "Sir, please don't make this difficult," the second guard said, his grip firm. Owen closed his eyes, bracing himself for the shame, for the image of his failure that would be burned into his daughter's memory forever. The guards grabbed his arms, their grip tight and unyielding. The world seemed to shrink to the feel of their hands on him and the sound of his daughter's frightened gasp. "Stop. Let go of that man this instant." The voice, though aged, rang out with the force of a naval command, cutting through the lobby's tense atmosphere like a thunderclap. Everyone turned. Mrs. Eleanor Vance stood there, her small frame radiating an authority that belied her gentle appearance. Her eyes, usually so soft, were now fierce, blazing with indignation. Beside her, Isabel looked on with a mixture of shock and relief. The guards, startled, instinctively loosened their grip on Owen's arms. Sterling scoffed. "Eleanor, this is none of your concern. This man is a common thief." "He is nothing of the sort," she declared, stepping forward. Her gaze fell on Owen, and her expression softened with a profound, almost maternal protectiveness. "This man is a hero," a confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Sterling let out a disbelieving laugh. "A hero? He's a janitor." Mrs. Vance ignored him, her attention fixed on the guards and the assembled crowd. "A few weeks ago, I had a fall in my apartment. I was alone, and I couldn't reach the phone. I was on the floor for nearly an hour, growing weaker." Her voice trembled slightly at the memory. "No one heard me. No one knew. But this man," she said, looking directly at Owen, "was making his rounds. Through the door, he heard a sound, a tiny little moan. He could have ignored it. He could have assumed it was the television. But he didn't. He stopped. He listened. He called my name." She took a breath, her voice growing stronger. "When I didn't answer, he didn't walk away. He used his own phone to call security and insisted they use the master key to check on me. He saved my life." She turned her fiery gaze back to Sterling. "The locket he returned to me. That wasn't something I lost. It was a gift I had been trying to give him. It belonged to my late husband, Admiral Vance. Owen refused to take it, saying he didn't need a reward for doing the right thing." The revelation hung in the air, thick and undeniable. The word Admiral landed with the force of a cannonball, instantly recalibrating the power dynamic in the room. Admiral Vance was a legend, a decorated war hero whose portrait hung in the city's most exclusive clubs. To be the wife of such a man gave Eleanor Vance an unassailable credibility. Sterling's face, once so smug, had turned a pasty white. The guards dropped Owen's arms as if they were hot coals, stepping back with apologetic expressions. "Ma'am, we were just following Mr. Sterling's directive," one of them stammered. "Your directive was to harass an innocent man," Isabel cut in, her voice sharp as glass. She stepped forward to stand near Owen, a clear and public declaration of her allegiance. "A man who has shown more character and integrity than Mr. Sterling could ever comprehend." She looked at Owen, her eyes filled with a deep, unwavering admiration. Penny, seeing that her father was safe, ran to him, wrapping her small arms around his legs. Owen knelt and held her close, burying his face in her hair, the scent of her shampoo a grounding comfort in the chaotic swirl of emotions. The crowd's energy had completely shifted. The suspicious glances directed at Owen were now turned, with full force, upon Sterling. He stood isolated in a sea of silent judgment. Just then, a security guard's radio crackled to life. Dispatch to lobby desk. We've reviewed the security footage from Mr. Sterling's floor. The tenant's personal assistant was seen entering his study this afternoon and leaving with a small box. We also have a notification from a downtown pawn shop about a watch matching the description. The silence that followed was damning. Sterling's face crumpled, the last of his blustering arrogance evaporating, leaving only the pathetic shell of an entitled bully, exposed and humiliated. He had not lost his watch, he had simply misplaced his humanity. In the days that followed, the fallout was swift and decisive. Mr. Sterling, facing both legal trouble for filing a false report and complete social ostracization within the building, broke his lease and moved out in the dead of night, a disgraced shadow. The board of directors, prompted by a formal, and very firm, letter from Admiral Vance himself, issued a formal apology to Owen. But the Vances did more than that. They summoned Owen to their sun-drenched apartment, the one he had only ever seen from the doorway. Admiral Vance, a man with a formidable presence and kind eyes that matched his wife's, shook Owen's hand firmly. "Son," the Admiral said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "My wife told me what you did. Both times. In a world full of people looking out for themselves, you looked out for someone else. That's a rare quality." They didn't offer him a simple reward. They offered him a future. The Admiral ran a large charitable foundation for veterans and their families, and he offered Owen a position as a logistics and facilities coordinator. The job came with a manager's salary, full benefits, and a schedule that would allow him to be home every night for dinner. It was an escape hatch, a lifeline he never knew existed. Later that evening, as Owen was packing up his few personal belongings from the janitor's closet, Isabel found him. The air between them was different now, charged with unspoken feelings. "I heard about the job offer," she said softly. "You deserve it, Owen." "I don't know what to say," he confessed, looking at his worn overalls for the last time. "It feels unreal." "It's real," she said, taking a small step closer. "Good things happen to good people. Sometimes it just takes a while." He looked up, and in her eyes, he saw not pity or professional courtesy, but a genuine, profound respect that mirrored his own growing feelings for her. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For believing in me, always," she whispered. The new apartment was small, but it was filled with light. There were no rattling pipes, no drafty windows. On the kitchen table, 3 plates were set for dinner. Owen stood by the stove, stirring a pot of spaghetti sauce that actually smelled delicious, while Isabel helped Penny with her homework, a new, sturdy backpack sitting on the chair beside them. The frayed, patched one was gone, a relic of a life that already felt distant. There was an easy warmth in the room, the comfortable silence of people who belonged together. After dinner, Penny brought out a new drawing. This one wasn't just of a son. It was a picture of 3 people holding hands, a tall man, a smiling woman, and a little girl in the middle. Underneath, she had written in wobbly letters, "My family." Owen's eyes met Isabel's over Penny's head, a universe of gratitude, relief, and affection passing between them in a single, silent glance. The empty chair at his table, a symbol of his loss for so long, was now filled. Later, after Penny was tucked into bed, Owen and Isabel stood on the small balcony, looking out at the city lights. "I used to think being strong meant handling everything on your own," Isabel said, her voice barely a whisper. "But you showed me that real strength is about kindness. It's about showing up for people." Owen took her hand, his calloused fingers lacing through hers. "I was just trying to be the man my daughter thinks I am," he said. He thought about the locket, the accusation, the fear in Penny's eyes, and the final, beautiful turn of fate. Life had tested him, stripped him down to his very core. But in the quiet acts of a forgotten man, in the integrity of a loving father, he had found more than just survival. He had found a new beginning, a found family, and the quiet but powerful truth that a hero isn't always the one who makes the most noise, but the one whose goodness echoes in the lives of others, long after the work is done.